Hello, thank you for joining. We're just going to wait for about a minute just to see if more folks come in, but if not, then I'll just get started. All right, so I will just get started. Hi, my name is Chile. I use they, them pronouns. I work here at Full Spectrum Features. Managing Community Storytellers is one of our programs. I'm just going to do a run through of what we're going to do today. This is an opportunity for you to ask questions, but also to kind of get to learn more about what it is that we do for community storytellers and what it would look like if you are accepted into the program. So a quick little overview. We're going to go through just the background of community storytellers, how it started and where we are now. Then we'll go over the guidelines and the eligibility, followed by the program timeline. So if you get accepted, what now? And what that would look like for next year. And then towards the end, we'll go over the process of applying. So utilizing our submission platform, getting your materials ready, and then sending it off for us to review. And then lastly, I have a Q&A section, but honestly, feel free to pause me in the middle. Feel free to use the chat if you have a question. And if there's at any moment you need me to go slower or to repeat anything, again, go ahead and use the chat. I have it open right here next to me, and then I'm happy to support you in that way. But let's just start off with the background. So Community Storyteller started in about 2021. The goal was really to change how filmmakers work with community members in a non-extractive way, but also giving a chance for folks in the community who have zero film experience, but are very passionate and really wanting to organize their community around a particular issue, can do it with film. And so that's the spirit of this program. And so the short description is more so us really elevating the stories of Chicago residents and adapting community stories into short films. And so we work with film professionals to help 3 folks to adapt their stories into a film, but we come in to really support in organizing meaningful events around the story's message. And so that's more of the spirit of this program. So let's just say you get accepted. The storytellers will undergo a creative development process to refine their story into compelling screenplay. You do not have to submit a screenplay. It can be a story of yours that's personal to you, a story that occurred in your neighborhood. And then afterwards, we will pair you, and essentially you will be collaborating with a producer, a screenwriter, and a director to really bring it to life in the big screen. And in the midst of all that, you will be responsible with co-organizing with us a series of film projects, or we're also calling them impact projects, to really create an impact in your community with this film. And lastly, hence flipping the script on how we engage filmmakers and how we engage the community when it comes to making these films, you get to own the rights of the film. So you get to control what happens with the film, who it's shown to, where it's shown, and we can dive a little bit deeper down the line. But to your left, you'll see just the core team, myself for right now, but Cassidy Diamond is working in events, program, and accessibility. So all of the different formats that I'll be talking about, submitting to the application is mainly spearheaded by her. And then our production head is Amy E. Powell, who has been a really great thought partner in this as well. But one thing I want to focus on is this third point, really, thinking about what does it mean to organize an impact project? What is it? What kind of project are you looking for? It really depends on your story, right? And this is where you can really imagine and envision and ideate something that you feel passionate about. And so in this case, impact projects are really intended to mobilize your community, to really engage your community around a particular cause or issue. And because of this program, we highly encourage and require them to really organize something that is meaningful to the story or meaningful to the neighborhood in which they're wanting to show the story to. And so here are some examples listed below, but I want to provide more robust examples on the left side. You could, for example, partner with an organization, and whether it's a health clinic or a food pantry or harm reduction center, to distribute critical resources in your neighborhood. You can also partner with them to organize a series of talks raising awareness around the issue. Another option could be holding an intergenerational healing circle with guided meditation or visualization exercises. Another example is hosting an open mic, a series of open mics, if you like, and where you can really pull in people from the community to share their own stories, in addition to the ones shown in your film. And lastly, the traditional sense, so to speak, is you can create your own film screening, much more intimate film screenings, where you have like really deep conversations with local leaders, maybe people in your neighborhood or even your block, and really just building alliances by having these kinds of conversations. But some other examples, as you'll see in the middle, is you can do a talk, panel discussion, mutual aid drive, you can do performance if you'd like, or a social media campaign. Again, everyone is different. And so think of this as more of case management, where we will work with you in identifying and fleshing out this project idea. So next up is just a little preview of what we did for the first cohort. We only have 1 year under our belt, and we're about to enter our second. And the first 3 storytellers, one of them is Mina Patel from Rogers Park. She really wanted to focus on the pandemic of loneliness, especially among immigrant communities, and even more so for communities who might not speak English or another dominant language, depending on the region that they're in. In this case, this film is focused on 2 women who befriended each other despite having a language barrier. And the project that she ended up facilitating afterwards is a series of workshops for social workers, for educators, people like you and me who work with immigrant communities, and really thinking about how we can support folks who might be experiencing loneliness on a more interpersonal level. The next person was Casey Diaz. Her story is rooted in Humboldt Park and was really focused on thinking about Afro-Puerto Ricanos existing around Humboldt Park, but not just them themselves, but people who have been existing at Humboldt Park for a long time, even unhoused people. And so they have partnered with local organizations who work with unhoused folks to provide services and resources to them. They have also took a big step forward by applying for a grant, and they ended up starting their own film school specifically for teenagers and young people in Humboldt Park, and they just ended up doing that this summer. So it's really cool to see the direction that they took their film with. Lastly is David Rojas. He was representing Pilsen Little Village area. And he really wanted to focus on the tensions that a lot of families face, especially multiracial families, when anti-Blackness ends up being pervasive among non-Black people of color. And so he ended up organizing a series of workshops that are focused on anti-Black workshops within the Latina community, and more so focusing within Pilsen and Little Village. And so each person approached it very differently. And I want you to know, and we want you to know, that we will support you in the direction that you would like to go with your story and your project. So now we're going to get into the guidelines, whether or not this is something for you. One thing to note, that based on the first cohort to now, is we did it a little bit different, and we narrowed down the neighborhood. So before, it was open to all of Chicago. And after doing a couple listening sessions with the community, with local organizations, people participated in the program in the past, and even film teams, we've really narrowed it down to the area where we reside, which is literally between North Lawndale and Little Village. And so we definitely encourage folks to be over 18, of course, currently live in Chicago. And there's a section in the application where we do ask for proof of address. And this is the part that I want to highlight: possess relationships or have deep connections in North Lawndale or Little Village area. you are not required to live in these neighborhoods. We recognize that people move for a variety of reasons, some of which is not their personal decision, but systemic problems. But we want to make space for those folks. So if you live in Hyde Park, for example, but grew up in North Lawndale or grew up in Little Village, you can absolutely apply. The only thing that we find important is that you still have roots in those neighborhoods. You still have relationships there. You still have connections there, or feel really passionate about what happens in that neighborhood. So if that is you, please apply. One thing to note too that was different from the previous year to this year is that now we're restricting it to folks who are new to filmmaking. So if you're someone who's already produced a feature film or has a slate of short films that you've already been working on, this program is not for you. We're trying to make space for folks who are completely new. So please be mindful of that. Definitely looking for folks who really care about using stories for their community to not only engage them, but to organize. If you're someone who thrives in a collaborative environment, this might be for you. There's gonna be a lot of collaborating with myself, with the film teams, and other people that are outside Full Spectrum. If you yourself are excited about leading a project from start to finish, this is pretty important because you will be leading your impact project. We want you to take ownership, but of course, lean on us for additional support, such as funding, for example. We do provide some funds to support your impact project. And lastly, just recognize that there will be challenges. There will be need for flexibility, as is with any film production. Some things don't always go in the way that we want to, but we want to be respectful of your vision. So please know that we are in your corner and will support you in that regard. And then lastly, just for context, the stories need to be fictional or based on a true story. We're not documentary filmmakers. We're really focused on turning something into a screenplay and it being a narrative film. And lastly, just for you to know, as much as we'd love to honor all big dreams, unfortunately, we do have to execute the film within 1 to 2 days. So I don't necessarily want you to worry about that. I just want you to tell your story, and then we will have a chance to think about, okay, what is really possible, and we will pitch those possibilities if you're selected. So one thing to note, of course, the deadline to submit is October 22nd, which is on a Sunday at 11:59 p.m. But if for some reason there's some technical issues or if you need an extension, please email me as soon as possible. I will share my email at the very end. Okay, so you applied, you got accepted, you got the email. I'm very excited for you. Here's what you should expect in 2024. So this is a year-long program. You won't necessarily start the very first day of January, but there will be some things happening in January. So from January to March, there will be onboarding and development. Onboarding, just getting your documents signed, getting your materials, maybe doing a press release, just getting settled. In terms of development, it's planting the seeds of your film. And that means doing a 2-day writing intensive. It won't be back to back. It might be 1 day for 1 week and 1 day the next week. And then lastly, meeting your creative team. So we will introduce you to your producer, and hopefully we'll have your script writer by then. If not, we will select them in the midst of that window. From March through May, there's 2 things happening: project visioning and then pre-production. For project visioning, you're going to be doing some workshops with Full Spectrum, maybe attending some professional development sessions with other organizations, or maybe even you attending different events to spark inspiration for your impact project. So a couple of things could be happening there. In terms of pre-production related to your film, you will be finalizing your script. And then lastly, selecting your directors. This is going to be a collaborative decision, mainly because you will have to have a really strong, trusting relationship with your director, since they're the ones going to be translating your story into a film. Of course, that also goes with the screenwriter, but given the timeline, we will be identifying a screenwriter simultaneously as selecting our storytellers. From May through July, project planning is happening, and then production is actually happening. So what that means is you will start thinking about venues, locations, the type of project you actually want to make happen, anyone you want to collaborate with. And then on the back end, you'll also be allowed to engage in some consulting hours. So let's just say you want to do a toolkit for your film. It's a discussion guide for educators and trainers. You can use 4 consulting hours or 2 of 4 if you'd like to meet with our director of education. And she is really wonderful and a resourceful person to help you steer the ship in the way that you want it to. But you can use those however you'd like. And then, of course, during that time, your film is actually being shot. So during that time, you would be more of a witness, but also a supporter for your core creative team. So that's your producer, your screenwriter, and your director. And of course, by that time, you had already had multiple conversations, multiple sessions to make sure that they know what you're wanting to show on film. July to September, continuing your project planning. But in that midst is post-production. So your film has been shot and now it's being edited. During this time, we're not sure if we're still trying to figure out whether or not you can be present in the editing phase because we're still trying to identify some internal decisions in that regard. But when we're actually filming the story, you can absolutely be on set during that time. Okay, September, November, by that time, your film's already captioned, it's already wrapped, ready to be shown to the world. That's when your impact projects are happening. So you have a window to execute or perform or act on your impact projects. And then in October specifically, the world premiere will happen, which is where we showcase all the short films. And then we have a community discussion with everyone involved. And then in December, it's more relaxed. We'll get a chance to celebrate with you and a +1 just to thank you for your work. And I hope that's a good time for you to continue doing the work even after the program ends, right? We hope to be more of a catalyzer. So we'll have a celebration for you. We'll have some feedback sessions just to get a sense of what worked, what didn't work. But my hope is to have those conversations throughout the program, not wait till the end. And then lastly, the film handoff. You'll get a document and like instructions on how to access your film, what to do with it when you get it, how to protect yourself, and then you're welcome to fly high. Okay, so just a very condensed, I know I threw a lot of information at you, but for a condensed version of this, the program timeline in short is from the 22nd of January to like about the 15th of 2024. But please note, you will be receiving a stipend, a $7,500 stipend paid in waves. You will commit about 5 hours per week, between 45 to 50 weeks, depending on what's happening. So for example, maybe when the film is being shot, it's a 10-hour day and you want to be on site during that whole time, you are more than welcome to, but you're also welcome to adjust your schedule so that way the next week you don't work your 5 hours. We'll check in more once you're onboarded. But what it would look like is you would attend virtual meetings, both for cohort check-ins, one-to-one discussions. You'll also attend in-person activities, which includes a creative development, film productions, and workshops, and more. Thanks for joining us. Oh, there we go. Okay. So now we're going to get into how to apply, like, okay, I think I'm good. I really want to do this. Let's go. So you definitely want to go to fullspectrum.submit.com. You can also go to our website. It's also linked on there. And the portal will essentially ask you a couple of things. First, your general information, what your ward is, proof of address. But the meaty part of the application is the story questions. So this is where you can tell us your story, pitch your project, and any ideas that you might have. So the first question that we ask is pitch us your story. The second question we ask is, why do you want to tell this story and why you? The next is, what kind of project, whether an event, a talk, performance, or other, do you imagine organizing alongside your story? So we really want you to describe how your personal connection to the community influences the impact of this project as well. That's why we're trying to be intentional about that. The next is, tell us about a time you worked with a team to achieve a goal and what challenges did you face and how did you work together to overcome that? And then lastly, this is where you can provide sample materials. They can be links, they can be uploads that can speak to your story itself. Like, here's what I envision it looking like. Or you can provide articles or videos about a potential impact project and be like, this is what I'm thinking my project can be to complement my story. You can do one or both. And lastly, we'll have some demographic questions. Those are very much optional. I know a lot of folks are constantly asked these questions. This is an opportunity for us to check ourselves, to make sure we are holding ourselves accountable and making sure that the folks who live and reside in these areas or have been impacted by these areas are reflected in this process. So again, that is also optional. A couple of things to know is why we accept these formats. So for the meaty questions, so the story questions, with the exception of the sample materials, we accept folks to respond in writing, in video, or in audio. We're here about accessibility, and providing multiple ways to do it is part of accessibility. To continue that further, there are other formats. So if someone needs to use a screen reader or needs a dyslexia-friendly font format, we provide Word doc, PDF, and also willing to do it over the phone if you prefer. Okay, so I'm going to throw more words at you, but this is for the sake of transparency. We think it's really important to explain how we will review these applications. And each question reflects the questions that we're asking the curatorial team, or what folks refer to as the jury, when they're reviewing your application. So for example, the question of pitch your story, we're thinking about film practicality and potential. Again, it has to be shot in 1 to 2 days, so we have to be mindful about resources. So we ask, does the story have a clear message or theme? And does the story have unique requirements for filming, whether it's special effects, stunts, or maybe multiple locations? Please don't let this make you feel as if you have to minimize your story or contain it in any way. You tell us your story how you see fit. We're just trying to be mindful about production resources, and we can pitch what would be possible to you if you're selected, and then move from there. The next question is, why do you want to tell a story? This is more so about significance and timeliness. So the curatorial team, the people that will be reviewing your applications, they're from North Lawndale. They're from Little Village. And then for the lead curator, which is the one who's wrangling everybody, they're from somewhere in Chicago. And so they're all Chicago folks. So we're really intentional about this section about significance and timeliness. So the questions that we ask of them to think about is, does the storyteller highlight their personal connection to the story? Does the storyteller demonstrate cultural humility and an understanding of the potential impact of the story? And does the storyteller introduce a new perspective or challenge or common assumption? Not to say that you're expected to, but it's something for them to reflect on. The next one is, what kind of project? We definitely think about community impact and community engagement. So the questions to think through for the curatorial team is, does the storyteller clearly define which specific community they hope to engage with the story? Does the storyteller clearly articulate how they are deeply connected to their community? And does the storyteller clearly explain how they want their project to impact their specific community? So we want you to also be intentional about what kind of project you would like to organize. And lastly, in terms of describe a time that you work with a team, we're thinking about collaboration, adaptability. We want to make sure you can work well, not only with your cohort, but with your larger film team, and then also with the full spectrum staff. There's going to be a lot of collaboration. So we definitely want to know if you're open to feedback and critique. We want to know if you are able to learn from setbacks, maybe overcome some challenges, and also like to learn if you can honestly communicate with and listen to a team, even if they're difficult. We're here to support you. And as we get onboarded, we'll have some trainings as well, so that way you know what's available to you and you know how we work internally as well. Okay. Continuing on the how to apply. So I have just a quick little clip here. It just kind of shows you what the platform looks like. When you go to fullspectrum.submit.com, this will be the page. One thing to know is on the bottom right-hand corner is going to prompt you to accept cookies. Please accept cookies. I personally don't like accepting them, but unfortunately the platform does require for you to have a good experience. So just accept those. And then you can just, let it refresh and then click in the middle where it says view callouts, or just scroll down and then you will see the 2 application options, either in English or Spanish, and you can choose the one that applies to you. And in this case, I clicked the English one, and you will see it shows everything that's already available on the website and everything that we have already discussed in this session. But if you feel good and you're ready to go, just click on apply on the right side, and it will prompt you to either log into your account or create an account. So let's just say you create an account and it takes you to the next section. From there, you can just log in. That's my email. And once you log in, you will be immediately prompted to the application portal, and it should look like this. The very first question will ask for your physical address and then your proof of address. But there's a couple of things to note here that would be helpful for you. On the top right-hand corner is a little drop down, as you will see in a moment. You can click on details if you just want to refresh your memory on what was initially proposed about us, about the questions, about the review process. And you can also go back and just preview the whole application. And that will give you a clear big picture view of all the questions that we asked, and it lists out which ones you have not answered. So make sure you review the ones that you are required to answer before you submit. But once you're ready, just go ahead and go to the top drop-down menu, click submit, or if you just kind of want to take a breath and come back to it, just save and quit. And it should be pretty straightforward. But if you have any issues whatsoever, please contact technical support for the platform specifically. Let me show you that page real quick. There you go. So if you have any technical issues, just contact support@submit.com. But if you have any additional questions regarding the program itself, that's where I can come in and support. But going back to the previous slide, you're welcome to check out our FAQ page. It's, if I say so myself, I did my best to build it in a nice way where it shows both English and Spanish, but I want to just pass it on to y'all to ask me any questions you might have about community storytellers.